What Sharon Osbourne really thinks about Iron Maiden and Bruce Dickinson. Though music beefs are typically confined to the hip-hop game, metal is not immune to the sport. A venomous verbal battle between Ozzfest founder Sharon Osbourne and Iron Maiden frontman Bruce Dickinson escalated during Ozzfest stop in Devore, California, where Maiden were pelted with eggs, lighters, and ice during their final performance on the tour. Hello headbangers, welcome to the club. In today's video, we're going to talk about Sharon Osbourne, Iron Maiden, and Bruce Dickinson. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and let us know in the comments below what other stories you'd like to see covered in our channel. There's no doubt that both Iron Maiden's Bruce Dickinson and former Black Sabbath icon Ozzy Osbourne are exceptional frontmen who have remarkable music careers. Therefore, fans would expect nothing but professional mannerism from both musicians as they hit the road together for 2005 Ozzfest. However, both sides ended up having a feud which resulted in a fight on stage that ended Iron Maiden's tenure in the tour. Although a variety of bands have made up the yearly lineups of Ozzfest over the years, the most memorable year was undoubtedly 2005 when Ozzy Osbourne was joined by legendary bands and musicians such as Black Label Society, Slipknot, Rob Zombie, Mastodon, and more. Unfortunately, they all were overshadowed by another band, Iron Maiden, when things got heated up only after a month together, and fans were affected by this dispute eventually. Let's dive into the details of the story of how Iron Maiden, especially Bruce Dickinson, had unpleasant moments with Ozzy Osbourne and his wife and manager Sharon Osbourne. In a statement released in 2005, Sharon says she's done with Iron Maiden. "I know you would love to keep talking about this, because this is the most press that Iron Maiden has had in the US in 20 years. But let's move on, shall we?" Osbourne wrote in an open letter to Maiden's manager, Rod Smallwood. She signed the letter "The Real Iron Maiden" and accused Smallwood of fueling the tension to try and sell records and the band's upcoming shows. During a Maiden set on Ozzfest 2005, the venue's public address system was cut on at least 3 occasions, as was the main stage's power, rendering Dickinson's microphone and the band's amps silent. When power was eventually restored, Dickinson accused the festival's organizers of deliberately interrupting the band's performance and proceeded to launch a verbal attack on Sharon's husband, Black Sabbath frontman Ozzy Osbourne. As soon as Maiden left the Ozzfest stage, Sharon grabbed the microphone and hit back at Dickinson. The following evening, she issued an official statement taking further jabs at the singer. Smallwood evened the score in a statement of his own, which read, "The scale, viciousness, and concentration of the throwing made it obvious that this was a premeditated and coordinated attack." Bury Your Dead, one of this year's Ozzfest bands, were caught in the crossfire of the battle as several reports surfaced online that they'd been involved in the egg toss. The band denies the allegations but has received numerous death threats from incensed Maiden fans. In one Sharon Osbourne statements, she had no problem to admit being the responsible of disrupting Maiden's set. "I did cut sound," she wrote. "Ozzfest is our tour. Dickinson doesn't have the manners to realize that when you are invited into someone's home, are seated at their dinner table, are eating their food and drinking their wine, you shouldn't talk disrespectfully about them. Otherwise, you just might get your ass handed to you. Every action has a reaction. Was Dickinson so naive to think that I was going to let him get away with talking crap about my family, night after night? I don't think he realizes who he's dealing with." Osbourne took offense to remarks she said Dickinson made concerning the quality of the tour's sound system and criticisms he's made about Sabbath and Ozzy, including, "We don't need a teleprompter and we don't need a reality show to be legit," she wrote. "Night after night, we heard his complaints from the stage about how corporate the venues were and how outrageous the ticket prices were. It's shameful that Dickinson felt he had the right to air his issues publicly on stage every night as a way to boost his own ego. Dickinson never once came up to Ozzy and me to voice any concerns. If he wasn't able to show us that courtesy, then why should I give him the respect to air my grievances with him in private?" Frankly, Dickinson got what he deserved. We had to listen to his crap for 5 straight weeks. He only had to suffer a couple of eggs on the head. Whether this latest missive will be the beef's last remains to be seen, but there's been no response from the Maiden camp so far. Ozzfest fans have been turning to the internet since the first reports of last Saturday's egging incident began to surface, flooding several heavy metal websites' message boards to vent about the situation, with many calling on the so far silent Ozzy Osbourne to tell his side of the story. After all, the actions were made by his wife and manager Sharon Osbourne. Ozzy Osbourne also opened up about the matter during an interview with The Quietus in 2010 and stated that he was fine with how his wife handled the situation. In addition to this, Prince of Darkness revealed that he didn't know that the Iron Maiden frontman was insulting him every night on that stage at first and was surprised about his actions since he could have just walked away or talked to his face in the first place. According to The Quietus interview, Osbourne said, "Unbeknown to me, every night he was going on stage slagging me off. That wasn't fair. If he didn't like the tour, he should have said I'm jumping the tour, but to go on stage and slag me off for no reason. I'd never said a bad thing to him. The bass player came round at the last gig and said I'm sorry about Bruce, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Nobody had told me, you know. I said, you know what? I don't understand what you're talking about here." He added, "And so, I mean, Sharon got pissed off. It was nothing to do with me. I suppose Sharon got pissed off. I'll back my wife up to the hilt, but I didn't know what was going down. But you know what? A few quid out of that Ozzfest. If you've got something to talk to me about, be a man, come to my face and say, I think you're an asshole. Don't be an idiot. It's so pathetically childish." Years later, Bruce Dickinson finally decided to comment about the whole situation and tried to leave it in the past. In an interview with the NME, Bruce Dickinson played down the friction between himself and the Osbournes, saying, "It's a complete storm in a teacup. I grew up listening to Black Sabbath with Ozzy. Ozzy and Sabbath are eternal rock icons. So that's it. End of story. The fact is, I don't like reality TV shows. So I'm not going to offer an olive branch to the Kardashians either." During this interview, he also revealed why Iron Maiden avoids putting political subjects in their songs' lyrics. By saying, "We take on subjects that we feel passionately about and that we think it's appropriate to sing about. There's plenty of people taking on political issues. Bands, frankly, I don't think they've ever been good at it. They tend to be a little bit shallow and a little bit transparent. Sometimes it's self-serving. My best advice is if you really feel the urge to make political statements, then really you should be a politician, not a musician. Go and stand for election and do something about it." Sounds like Bruce is over this whole situation and have made peace with what happened in 2005. With all of this being said, which side are you on, Sharon or Iron Maiden? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next video.